Well, my friend and coworker David asked me if I wouldn't make him a little organizer for the top of his dresser at home. Apparently, he's been coming home and putting his car keys on top of his dresser, and Mrs. caught up with him. Now he needs some solution. So he sent me a picture of one that he liked in Amazon and some dimensions on the size he would like it to be. I've got some sapele here that I've milled down to 3/8 of an inch thick. I got a couple extra pieces that we'll use to test our setups and just in case something goes awry, we got an extra piece or two. So we're going to go ahead and make this up. It should be a fairly simple project. We could just use mitered corners, but I thought maybe I'd just go ahead and make some box joints or finger joints for this little project. I haven't made any in a while, and it's always good to practice the technique. So we're going to go ahead and connect these with some finger joints. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Should be a fairly straightforward project. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, we're set up to cut our box joints on our little organizer that we're making. What I did was I made a little jig, which is some hardboard glued to the bottom of a 3/4 piece of MDF. I have that clamped to my miter gauge extension. Normally, if I was making bigger box joints, I would make a whole separate jig and attach it to the miter gauge. But because these pieces are only about 1.25 inches wide, we can use it this way. I've checked everything, made sure everything was square. What I did was I raised the bit to account for the 1/4 inch hardboard. And the thickness of our stock is 3/8 of an inch. And I've cut them about a 16-inch longer than they needed to be. So what I wanted the height of the blade to be was basically 3/8 plus a 32nd, so that I'll get just a little bit of the end of the box joint sticking out past the edge of the material, so we can sand that smooth. So I raised it to that particular height. I checked it, made sure it was right, cut a test piece. I glued in a piece of 1/8 inch material, which matches the size of the blade. And I moved it over 1/8 of an inch to leave 1/8 of an inch space between the blade and the little pin here. So when I cut it, what'll happen, it'll cut 1/8 of an inch tongue on the end of the first piece. We'll put it in there like that, clamp it in, and cut 1/8 of an inch tongue. Then you just keep moving it over and over and over until you get it all cut. So let's go ahead and make those cuts. Okay, when we get to the last piece, the idea would be that we just put the next piece up there and continue on, but this last little pin isn't the same size as all the rest of them, and we'll trim all this off at the bottom. So what we'll do is we'll reverse it around like this, and then that makes the pin the exact same size as our gap, and we can go ahead and put this piece on there and cut it with the first piece on the part of the joint on this piece. Alright, well, here's our moment of truth to see if we can get these, we got these pieces to go together. So let's give it a try. and we didn't. They're a little too tight. So what we need to do is make some adjustments to our little sled here and make the cuts again. So they're a little too tight to go together. And we want a nice tight fit, but we don't want it that tight. So I'll make some adjustments to the saw. We'll cut these pieces off, and then we'll make some more test cuts till we get it right. All right, I've made some adjustments to the jig. It took me a couple of tries, but I got a joint that goes together with just a slip fit, but it's still, there's no slop in it. It doesn't wiggle up and down. And the joint's going to swell a little bit when we put some glue on it anyway. You can see that well, maybe you can, that the ends of the side pieces are a little proud each way, so I can go ahead and trim those off when once we get it all glued up and everything. So now that we have the jig set to where we want it, we can go ahead and get our pieces for our project and go ahead and make some box joints. I tried clamping this thing up with F-style clamps, just regular clamps, but the span is so long on each side, and the thickness, as I tightened them up, this was starting to flex, and it was pulling the corners out of square. So what I did was I just put some corner blocks on each corner, and I wrapped a bang clamp around it, and that keeps everything nice and square. I got a little square, plywood square that I made a while back. I got one in each corner just to make sure everything stays square. I checked the diagonals, and they're good, so everything is nice and square. We're ready to go. I'm going to use this Titebond 3 wood glue, which is the waterproof Titebond. One reason, it dries a little bit darker, and this is a darker wood, so it won't. It'll kind of be disguised. The glue joints will be a little disguised there. The second thing is it's got a longer open time, so there's a lot of joints on this thing to glue together and fit together, so any extra open time I can get with the glue is going to be good. So I'm going to go ahead and take this apart and glue it up. I'm not going to show that because it's just putting glue on little box joints. So I'll come back once we get everything dried up and we're ready to take it out of the clamp. I have a rabbiting bit set up in the router. I bought this rabbiting kit a few years ago from CMT, and it's got different size bearings. Allows you to make different size rabbits using basically one bit. So what I have is I have it set up for a 1/4-inch rabbit. It's just set a little bit above the table, and the idea is that we're going to take our little organizer and we're going to cut a rabbit on the inside of it to fit the plywood. I could have made a groove and whatnot in there and fit the plywood into it, but because this is fairly a short piece, I thought I'd just put a rabbit and we'd just screw the plywood with some felt on the inside of it to the bottom of the frame, and then that'll be a little bit easier. So what I have is, like I said, it's a 1/4-inch rabbit. I have it set, it's a little bit above the table. It needs to go up higher, but this stuff it chips out very easily. So if you try and take too much off at one shot, it's going to chip out like mad. So We're just going to take a little bit of a time. The idea is you go around it this way, and then you just kind of turn and keep going around until we reach the point where we started, and then we'll raise the bit and go ahead and do it again. Well, that's pretty much what the process. There's real no science to it. This is just a matter of raising a bit, go around again, raise a bit, go around again until we get it to the depth that we want it. And the depth we want is I got a piece of stick-on felt stuck to a piece of Baltic birch plywood, which is going to be our bottom. So I'm going to use this as a gauge to measure how deep that needs to be for that rabbit needs to be. So when this becomes flush with the bottom there, we'll be good to go. Now this does give you rounded corners, if you can see in there. It gives you a radius at the corners. So when we get to the depth we want, we'll take a chisel and square those up. So I'll just go ahead and raise the bit and make another pass and keep going until I get it to the depth that I want it. All right, well, after routing several passes, we got our depth of our rabbit to what we want, so that it's the plywood with that felt attached to it is basically flushed with the bottom edge of the organizer. So we're good to go. So we'll take a chisel and we'll square up the corners and pretty much be finished with that part. Then we can cut some plywood and stick some felt into it, drill some holes, and screw it on. All right, well, give you an update on our dresser top organizer. After I cut the rabbit with the router bit, I went ahead and cut squared up the corners with a chisel, and then went ahead and cut a piece of plywood the size to fit inside the rabbit. Also drilled some holes for some number 4 by 3/4 inch screws. Used the drill press for that because we're going into the rabbit on the inside, and there wasn't a lot of room for error, so we wanted to make sure that it went straight in. Then after I drilled the holes, I used a countersink to countersink them so we can set them flat. These screws are currently steel screws that I have in there. They're only temporary. I have them in there to screwing them in cuts the thread, and to take them in and out. If we'd be using our brass screw that is gonna be our final screw, it would be we'd mess up the top of it. So I use these steel screws until I'm ready to put it together for the final time, and then when I do that, I switch over to the brass screws. So we got that. We got the bottom sanded a little bit. It needs a little bit more now that we got some fuzzies around the holes in the where we drilled the holes. But on this side, I went ahead before I let me see if I can lighten that up a little bit. There we go. I went ahead and put some stick-on felt in the bottom of on the piece of plywood, and then just went ahead and screwed it in. When I screwed it in, you get a nice tight joint around the edges there. All right, it's time to put some finish on our little organizer. We're going to start with some Armor Seal from General Finishes. I've used this before. It puts a nice sealing coat on the wood, and then we're going to use some aerosol spray rattle can lacquer. This is a Minwax product. Normally I was using Deft, but my local Lowe's store, for one reason or another, doesn't seem to be carrying it anymore. So we're going to try that Minwax product and see how that works out. I got some of the Armor Seal in a jar so I don't dip out of the dip out of the can. I'm just going to go ahead and wipe it on with a rag. We normally put it on with on this project, I put it on with a foam brush, but unfortunately I don't have one, and I don't have the ambition to go get one. So this is gonna work out fine. And one thing I'll show a little bit of this, but one thing nice about this is this box joint is once you if you can see it when I get it in the light there. No, you can't see it too good. But the box joint with that ingrain, it really is a nice looking. It's a nice looking joint when it's made in tight fitting and whatnot. So really looks good. I like it that joint a lot. I've used it on other projects, and probably will use it on additional projects going forward. It's all about getting it set up right and getting the right setting on your saw and on your jig to get it to come out the way that you want it to come out. So we're going to go ahead and put the finish on the rest of this, and then once it dries, I'll probably let it dry overnight, and then tomorrow I'll just I'll spray some lacquer on it, and then we'll put it back together and it'll be done. Well, that's how I made this dresser top organizer. I hope you enjoyed watching the video as much as I've enjoyed making the project. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully David will get many years of good use out of it. So thanks again for watching, and if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe.